spring football fans. Well, our championship game is set, everyone. Shields up to Defender Nation. Congratulations on my DC Defenders for going into St. Louis and absolutely dominating a Battlehawk team that was not only the best in the conference, but record-wise, the best in the league this year. Now, I will say this. As much as I love the St. Louis franchise, and I do, I've been to that city 3 times. I went last year for the championship game. The city's great. The people are great. I love the Battlehawks name. I love the uniforms. I love the team colors. I think they got one of the best home fields and stadiums in the league. I like their history. I like their coach. I love A.J. McCarron. I like the way the fans have embraced that team. I like Andy Beck. But let's face it, there's something lacking in this team. Because we have seen the St. Louis Battlehawks lose too many big home games over and over and over again. 2 years in a row, they had the home field advantage in their playoff game. And they have looked terrible both games, with a chance to play a championship game on their own home field. This is going to eat this franchise and Andy Beck up, and you got to wonder, listen, as good as Andy Beck has been, do you replace him? I mean, let's face it, let's go back to 2023, when the 3 teams in the XFL conference, or the XFL North Division, finished, well, let's see, the DC Defenders that year finished at 9-1, and Seattle and DC finished at 7-3. But because of the tiebreaker, Seattle was in, and St. Louis was out. St. Louis that year split both games with the Dragons, and they got destroyed both times, especially at home, by the Defenders. Last year, we saw the Battlehawks get dominated by Wade Phillips and the San Antonio Brahmas. They looked unprepared last year. And today, they looked unprepared, even though they played them last week in D.C. And not for nothing, but D.C., for all the hype about the home field in St. Louis, D.C. came to that building not once but twice and dominated both those games. Back in 2023, they dominated the Battlehawks in St. Louis. And you gotta wonder, what's lacking? I mean, last year, they blackballed A.J. McCarron this year, saying, as good as he was, they needed a more mobile quarterback. Well, in comes Manny Wilkins, he gets hurt. In comes Max Duggan, the Heisman Trophy runner-up. And let's face it, Max Duggan looked about as good as J'Mar Smith did today. And he was replaced by Brandon Silvers, and I was wondering when he made that move. I see why he's doing it, but you look at the teams that have done well against DC, they usually have a mobile quarterback, and Brandon Silvers is not exactly mobile. Is he a much better passer? Well, absolutely. Does he have a much better throw motion? Yeah, I think we can honestly say that by default. It is. But the way that DC defense was playing today, they were smothering both quarterbacks. I didn't think Brandon Silvers was going to have much of a chance. Now, did he do better in his defense? Yeah, but game was too far gone by then. And DC today, they by far played the most complete game this year. I've said that DC, Shields up, is a Jekyll and Hyde team. When their defense is not giving up 30 points, they're shoving their opponent down totally. And on the days where they shove their opponents down totally, they have trouble getting the red zone, but they manage to win a close game. On the days where their defense seems to give up a ton of points, their offense manages to score a ton of points. By halftime, the St. Louis offense had to think about 67 yards total offense. They averaged 144 yards rushing this year on the ground, and today they only got 83. And Shannon and Coach Shannon of DC, I've been saying, Skip Holtz should be coach of the year. You can make the coach for Coach Shannon on DC. He took over with a week to go, lost his defensive coordinator a week later, and there were 3 teams that had this problem. One was San Antonio, who had the worst year. Memphis had just as bad of a year, and DC is going to the championship game. Now, he did credit in an interview after the game that Coach Reggie Barlow gave him a good foundation, which they did. They have. And I said coming into this game, the one big advantage DC had was that quarterback, and it showed. Quarterback makes a difference. You look at the teams who had the better quarterbacks today, Bryce Perkins and Jordan Ta'amu, they're playing the championship game next week. And they're going to be they're going to finish 1 and 2 for the offensive player of the year, or the team MVP, the league MVP, whatever. So that's pretty appropriate. We're going to see those 2 quarterbacks play against each other next week, and it should be a very good game. DC will have a chance to avenge a game which they were dominated by Michigan early in the year. I mean, Michigan gave DC the worst loss this year. That was up at Ford Field in Detroit. We'll see how it goes against in St. Louis. But today, DC shut everything down in defense. Total yards, 388 for DC, 240 for St. Louis. St. Louis had only 83 yards on the ground, which they've been averaging 144 yards a game this year. DC, again, I don't know what it's about the Dome, but they go in there and they have a tendency to not only dominate, but they dominate the ground game. 187 yards of rushing on the game for the defenders. 24-18 first down for the defenders. Time possession was 31-29, almost even. Total plays, 63-51 in favor of DC. But this was old DC from the start. I mean, you had 27,800 and plus coming today, which, people were saying we could draw 40,000 this week at the Dome of America. You wonder if the novelty is wearing off at St. Louis just a little bit. Or maybe they may frustrate Coach Beck, because this is by far St. Louis' best team. And I thought for sure they would crack over 30. They didn't even do that. Listen, I'm not trying to trash the St. Louis fan base. They are by far the best. But the league has a problem. This year, the only team that did well or increase in attendance, I shouldn't say do well, from last year were the Panthers by 18,000. So they had a good year with that. But Max Duggan today, not a good day. Center 14, 105 yards. 1 bad interception. Brandon Sills was 6 of 10, 81 yards. 1 touchdown, but the game was far gone by the time we got in the game. Jordan Ta'amu had 1 really bad interception. 1 nice touchdown pass, 18 to 26, 204 yards. But this belonged to the ground game. Deion Jackson, 21 carries, 110 yards, 2 touchdowns. Abram Smith looked more like his old self. 13 carries, 64 yards. And Jordan Ta'amu, 2 carries, 13 yards. Jacob Sayers was held to 45 yards rushing on 9 attempts. Not a good day for the Battlehawks ground game, which was by far the best in the game. Hakeem Butler, only 2 catches, 19 yards. One of them was a touchdown. Jacob Pearson, 2 catches for 50 yards. Jacob Sayers, 3 catches for 27 yards. But this day belonged to the DC defenders. Chris Rowland, 5 catches, 42 yards. Cornell Powell, 4 catches, 57 yards. This is going to be hopefully a fun game next week It can't be any worse than last year when I went and saw Birmingham pitch a total shutout on San Antonio. I think we'll get a much better game, but I'm sure both teams will be studying that game film from, what was it, week 5 when, like I said, Michigan just dominated DC. We'll see how well that does. I mean, listen, you got two ferocious defenses. Michigan, which is more consistent. DC, which is definitely more Jekyll and Hyde, but you get the two best quarterbacks. And you got quarterbacks who are more of a dual threat option. I would say Bryce Perkins is definitely the better runner than Tiamu, but Tiamu can run the ball. But next week's game should be interesting. It's pretty much almost an East Coast matchup. DC, Michigan, are the teams, I guess, farthest east and most north in the league. And I believe also next week they're going to announce in a halftime announcement about expansion. We will see how that goes. But for now, it is DC and Michigan. Congratulations to the DC Defenders. My Defenders. We get some unfinished business from 2023. That loss to Arlington still kills me. But this opponent we're facing this time around is definitely much better than the Arlington team we faced back in 2023. I expected to win in 2023. I can honestly tell you that. There was no doubt we were going to win that game. That's how confident I was. I can't see the same this time around. That Michigan team is a good team. And not for nothing, but we've seen this now where the teams that face each other in the playoffs, who also play the week before week 10, the winner of the week 10 game always seems to lose the following week. First year of the USFL, the Generals beat the Stars in week 10, and they lose the following week and get upset in the conference championship game. 2023, the Arlington Renegades lose to the Houston Roughnecks, but then they go in and upset the Roughnecks the following week. This year we saw St. Louis beat DC last week on the road, and they come home and DC crushes them. So what's the moral of the story is? I guess you lose week 10 on purpose. All right, fans. Comments down below. What's your opinion? Like to know. What do you think about today's both games? What do you think about this matchup? And for the love of football, we'll talk to you later.